Today we've got a little different topic for us. We've got Steve Hanks here. Steve is the Larimer County Coroner, and he's a nationally certified medio-legal death investigator. He's also an Army veteran, I can actually say that, who grew up in Fort Collins. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology with a criminal justice concentration and a Master's of Science in Biosocial Criminology and a JD from the University of Denver Stroom College of Law. He also completed EMT and post-certifications. Steve began as an intern in the Larimer County Coroner's Office in 2012 and quickly started working as a death investigator and autopsy tech. Steve was elected coroner in 2022. And we also have Rafael Moreno with us. He works for the Larimer County Office of the Coroner and Medical Examiner, serving as the family advocate, public information officer, and a medical legal death investigator. He holds a BS in criminal justice and criminology with a minor in criminal analytics from Metropolitan State University in Denver. Completed his internship with the Denver office of the medical examiner in just over a year before graduating in December 2019. 2020, he was hired as a full-time death investigator for Larimer County Coroner's Office, a position he's held for 2.5 years, and he's also transitioning in May 23 to take on the responsibilities of family advocate. He currently holds a national certification in death investigation through the American Board of Mediological Death Investigators. Boy, there's a lot of big words in that, isn't it? So Steve, we're going to tell us about investigating.
All right, thank you. So I'm Steve Hanks. I'm the Larimer County Coroner, and like my biography said, it's a lot of stuff. But I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I graduated in 2001 from Poudre High School. I thought I just wanted to be a diesel mechanic. I did some auto mechanic stuff in high school. My dad was a big kind of part-time mechanic. Built a lot of cars, taught me a lot of stuff. He was a Overland Sertoma member and passed away last year, but I do have a soft spot in my heart for these organizations and what you guys do, the duck races and beer gardens and all the volunteering and service work and doing these presentations. Means a lot to me because I did a lot of it with my Sertoma family and those guys, so I'm happy to be here today. But I want to talk about my background, what I do as coroner, kind of what we're doing in Larimer County to change the system a little bit and improve things for our community and our families, and that's why we have a family advocate program now, which is really brand new to the coroner world. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but for now we'll go through a bunch of slides. There's a lot of words on the slides, but I'm pretty informal, so I'll use the slides as my guide to kind of just talk about our office, what we do, kind of what we're comprised of. But really, the coroner system is really interesting. Every state's different. Some states have a coroner system where we're elected. Other states have a medical examiner system where the governor appoints a forensic pathologist or a medical examiner to be the state doctor, medical examiner to do the autopsies. States like Utah and New Mexico have a system like that. So all the deaths that happen that need autopsies go to one central location. Tennessee is kind of split up in regions. It's a similar system, but they can go to their own regions. And then in Colorado, we're on a coroner system. So every county has an elected coroner. The only difference is Denver City and County is unique, and Weld County is home rule, so they're unique as well. So they appoint their coroner. And both those coroners are also medical examiners at the same time. So they're the ones doing the autopsies, but also running the office and doing the administrative side. Larimer County has always been a little bit unique, going back to really the Big Thompson flood, if you guys were part of Larimer County back then. That's when Dr. Allen came out here, kind of fresh out of medical school, started working at McKee Medical Center in Loveland as a deputy medical examiner, deputy coroner, and then became coroner kind of right after the Big Thompson flood. So his first job was identifying 142 bodies that came out of that flood. And from there, he was really our first forensic pathologist, our first real medical examiner. Prior to that, it was really a family medicine doctor in town that kind of got thrown into the role. So Dr. Allen was really our first doctor that really was dedicated to doing autopsies, medical examiner, forensic pathology work. So that's kind of where our office began with, we got our first phone and our first death investigators and really started building our system that way. And he ran as coroner. He had to run his election every 4 years. He ran for nine terms, kind of unopposed for most of it, I believe. He's the longest serving Larimer County elected official because he didn't have term limits. Other counties across Colorado, some have term limits, but because nobody else wanted to be coroner, he was able to kind of modify the system and get approval to just keep running and get rid of those term limits, because we want people that want to do the job, that are trained in the job and able to do it well. So that's kind of how our system started. And he served 9 terms. Dr. Wilkerson was another forensic pathologist, so he was one of our medical doctors working with him. He became coroner when Dr. Allen retired. He served for 2 terms, and it was when I left the office as a death investigator to go to law school. I was graduating law school when Dr. Wilkerson was ready to retire, and that's when I kind of realized I wanted to come back to the office. I wanted to use my law school education to benefit the office, to kind of keep doing the work I'm doing, but also be involved with legislation and lawmaking, and use my reading and writing and research and education and stuff from law school, combine it with my medical legal education from previous education, and really improve the office. I don't want to be in a suit and tie. I don't want to be in a courtroom. Like that's not where I want to be. And so I'm really happy where I'm at now. I'm able to work with our county attorneys, kind of educate them on what coroners do, work on some of the laws that we have, and kind of navigate those areas of death and dying and serving the community. And so that's kind of the transition I made for the office. So one of the big changes I made was bringing in Rafael as a family advocate, and he'll explain a little bit more of that later. But we're guided by statutes, as you can see on the slides. Our main job really is to determine cause and manner of death, determine the time of death, kind of that timeline of scenario of circumstances, and then also notify a next of kin, notify family, and then we follow that up with additional grief support resources and the network that Rafael has. So we have laws, we have statutes. They're kind of what they are. There's a lot of gray areas there, which is where my benefit of going to law school comes in. I'm able to navigate the laws that I thought I knew before going to law school and look at them from a different light, and be able to work in those areas and explain things to families and work with law enforcement appropriately, to make sure we're taking care of families, taking care of communities, being accurate and truthful and transparent with what we do. But that statute kind of outlines kind of what we do. It's the cases that we investigate, what we don't investigate, and kind of guides us in our role. So what do we investigate? Every death in Larimer County is going to get reported to us. Whether that makes it a coroner's office jurisdiction or not, that's where we kind of make that line and make that determination. So cases that become a coroner's case, or anything that's not a natural death, are going to be a coroner's case. If any home death that's not attended by a physician or a hospice agency or something like that, we're going to go out to those, we're going to investigate those. It doesn't mean they're going to get an autopsy, but they fall within our jurisdiction. They require some level of investigation, whether it's just investigating the scene, talking to family, reviewing medical records, and then determining if an autopsy is needed. The cases that don't require or that don't fall within our jurisdiction, that's a smaller pool. So those are hospital deaths where people have been in the hospital for more than 24 hours, a nursing home or a hospice facility, so there's doctors on staff, there's nurses on staff. Everything's monitored. It's a natural death consistent with their disease process. We review those, make sure there's no red flags, nothing concerning, and then we can log those as a non-coroner case. But at least we had the name, we have that information, because sometimes we get calls about those cases as well. Somebody wants to confirm that somebody died, and we want to be able to look that person up and be able to tell that person that at least, yes, your estranged family member did die in Larimer County. It wasn't a coroner's case, but we do have a little bit of information. So that's why we want to know all the deaths, so we can really answer those questions for anyone that calls. But really, everything outside of that becomes a coroner's case, and those, like I said, may or may not get an autopsy. So there's accidents, there's homicides, there's suicides, drug overdoses. Those fall typically under accidents. Those are all going to be coroner's cases. Those are all going to get autopsied. About the only exception to those might be somebody that was in a motor vehicle crash, and then they go to a hospital, and then they die of their injuries after a period of time. So the x-rays happen, the CT scans happen, all the injuries are documented. We don't need to do a further autopsy to re-document those injuries, so we're not going to autopsy those. But in general, those types of cases outside of a hospital will be autopsied. And that's roughly about 250 cases in Larimer County itself. We talked a little bit, I'd mentioned the words coroner system, medical examiner system. So what's the difference between a coroner and a medical examiner? A medical examiner, that's a forensic pathologist. They've gone through medical school, they've gone through residency, and then they go through an additional residency in forensic pathology. So it's a lot of work. So, for individuals that just graduated medical school, like we get a lot of interest of students that want to go the route of forensic pathologist, but they go through medical school, they go through residency, and then they kind of realize like they get kind of burnt out in school, they're ready to work, and so they don't always go through the forensic pathology route. They find a different path in medicine. So the medical examiner career is shrinking. There's less than 500. There's about 400 or so medical examiners in the whole country. So we're very fortunate in Larimer County that we have one that's a Larimer County employee, and he's salaried. He's gonna work for Larimer County for a long time. So he's a good one to have and a good one to keep. He's our first medical examiner that we've had as a Larimer County employee. Dr. Wilkerson, Dr. Allen, they were elected officials and coroners, but they were contracted as medical examiners. So it's nice that we have one, that we can afford one, that we can provide benefits to and keep them happy and on our payroll. Because not only are we covering autopsies for Larimer County, but we're covering Wyoming, Colorado, part of Nebraska, all the way up to Rapid City, South Dakota. And we have a map of that coming up in a little bit too. But that's really what a medical examiner does, or focus on the autopsy, the medicine side of it. Whereas coroners, every county has to have a coroner. And so it's an elected position, and it doesn't take a lot to run for coroner, and especially in these small rural counties. You graduate high school, you're a resident of your county, and you can pass a background check. And that's all it takes for the rural counties, the small counties to be coroner. We recently passed a law in Colorado that for Larimer County, really the 11 biggest counties in Colorado that have populations of 150,000 or more, now we have to be nationally certified death investigators, or we have to be a forensic pathologist. So we have to have some sort of experience to run for coroner, which is really, really important, especially as I mentioned, we're doing autopsies, we're consulting with coroners from all over Colorado, all over Wyoming and Nebraska and South Dakota. They rely on our knowledge, our expertise. They may not have the chance to actually talk to our medical examiner, but they can talk to me, they can talk to my office. They know we're experienced, we're educated, we can help guide their investigations, because some of these small counties, they may only do a handful of real autopsy cases a year. They may only get 5 suicides in their whole county, where we're up to maybe about 80 suicides in Larimer County, about 80 plus accidental overdoses in Larimer County. We see these things almost every day, every few days. Weekly they come in. We're inundated with these types of cases. So it's really good that I, as coroner, that I have these standards for my investigators, that we're able to answer these calls for other counties and guide them and direct them. So that's kind of the difference between medical examiners and coroners. Is coroners, you don't have to have a lot of experience if you're in a small county, but it's good to have. And that's why I got my master's degree when I did. I wanted to be able to really understand how the brain worked and use that for working with families and helping with grief support. And then when I got kind of burnt out on the job and the role, because it's tough work, I went to law school. And when I thought about coming back for coroner, it's like, how can I make law school work for the coroner's office? So that was my path to make the coroner role in Larimer County a little more professional, a little more official, if we're not going to have a medical examiner as coroner. And it's also good because now Dr. White can focus on the autopsy, focus on the medicine. I can focus on the administrative side of the office, the legal side of the office, and working with community and investigators and guiding things that way. And so it's a great partnership between Dr. White and myself and the rest of the office. So yeah, we kind of go into some of our duties as coroner. Cause and manner of death. So manner of death, I kind of mentioned it. Those are accidents, homicide, suicide, natural deaths, and then undetermined is our fifth category. And then the mechanism of death is more of the cause of death. So if somebody dies in a motor vehicle crash, the manner of death is typically going to be the accident, but the mechanism of death might be multiple blunt force injuries because they have broken bones and a lot of injuries. So the cause of death is a lot more specific versus the manner of death. And then a myth up there is kind of how do we determine the exact date, the time of death? Date is somewhat easier, but time of death, like it really is our best guess, but it's a very good educated guess. It's based on how the body changes after death, some of the rigor mortis, liver mortis, things you see on those CSI shows that they talk about, on how the blood settles, how the body stiffens up. We use those to kind of determine our times, but also interviews with people, going through computers, phones, cameras, especially if it wasn't seen, like when were they last known alive. So we put a lot of that information together, but the time of death is really subjective, and a lot of times we'll use a kind of an early, late, or unknown AM, PM, because that's as close as we can get. And then our pronouncement time is when the paramedics pronounce death via their medical examiner or medical director at the hospital. So we use that official time for pronouncement time. So on a death certificate, you really get both those times. You get the time that we kind of believe and narrowed it down to the time they may have actually died, and then the second time is when a medical professional actually pronounced them deceased. So we take custody directly of the body from the scene, whether it's a house, if we go to a hospital, out in the field, wherever we may go. My investigators show up with a F-150 truck. It's got an electric gurney in the back that they can push a button and it raises up and down, just like what the ambulances have. We also have manual gurneys, like what funeral homes use, where they have to do squats and lift it up themselves. But we're going to take the body with us. Other counties use third-party services to transport bodies to and from the scene, to the morgue and things like that. But it's always been our practice to, we're already there. We have the equipment. We have the trucks. If we have to call fire department back out to help us lift and move somebody, we have that ability. But it's important for us. Like, we're already there. We're already working. We have that connection with family if they're there. It's nice that we can take the person directly into our care and take them back to the office. Or if they have funeral home arrangements, it's a natural death, they died at home. We have those. Sometimes we can have the funeral home come out. There's been times too where we take them to the funeral home because they already have those pre-arrangements. And then positively identifying the decedent, that's one of the big things that's really important to us too. Fingerprints is a big one. So we may go to a scene, they're identified by friends, family, loved ones. Like, that's great. That's still a presumptive identification. It's not really scientific, but it's a good start. It lets us know who they are. But when we bring people back to our office, we want to work on a scientific identification. So we're going to do inked fingerprints of all 10 fingers. We also have a digital fingerprint scanner that connects to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and their databases. And so with our Colorado driver's licenses, we record our right index finger, so it'll match that up. We also can pull driver's licenses from the DMV that has the driver's license info along with the picture of the inked fingerprint or the fingerprint from the DMV. And so all my investigators and myself were all trained in fingerprint comparison. So we have that digital one. If that comes back without a identification hit, then we're trained to compare fingerprints that we take during our intake with the digital fingerprint that is attached to their driver's license. So we have that option. We've also used forensic odontology or a dentist to compare dental x-rays that we're able to take back at our morgue with our x-ray machine to antemortem or x-rays that they had from their dental office. So if we have a presumptive ID on somebody, we know they had good dental work, maybe we reach out to this family of a presumptive person, they can put us in contact with their dentist, we can have them or send us dental x-rays, we can send our x-rays to their dentist, and get a comparison that way. And then the third way is through DNA. So the sheriff's office actually has a rapid DNA machine, and similar to the teeth and dental x-rays, we kind of have to have that presumptive identification because they have to get a dental or a DNA comparison from a living relative too. And then they put the two in the machine, and the machine comes back and says, yes, they're related, or no, they're not related, and keep looking. But we've used that machine, so DNA quite a few times. We've used dental x-rays, and then, like I said, the fingerprints are kind of our main go-to every time. But that's a big thing for us is identification. So notifying next of kin, that's oftentimes a challenge. Not everyone dies at home with family present. We have to figure out, who that person is. Once we have them properly identified, now our next step is to figure out who their family is. Who do we need to notify? Do they live in Larimer County? Once we figure out who they are, do they live in Larimer County? Do they live out of state or elsewhere in the state? If they're in Larimer County, we're going to go in person and notify them in person. We want to, make sure that they're home, that they're somewhere safe, that we can look out for them once we give them, this terrible news, and then we can start with grief support and getting questions answered afterwards. If they're outside of Larimer County, then we have to rely on other agencies. So we'll call a law enforcement agency to go make that notification for us, and then we'll end up talking to the family member over the phone after that. But it's kind of the same rule. I don't want to send somebody else out to do a notification if I'm not 100% sure that we've identified the person scientifically and accurately, and we know exactly who they are. I don't want to send somebody else to do a notification to a house unless am positive that that's their next of kin, that's their family member, because I don't want to have that person notified and then it turns out they're not next of kin, and we've either misidentified a person, the decedent, or misidentified family, because I don't like those news stories from other counties. I don't want them here. So we want to make sure that they're taken care of, that they're notified appropriately, and sometimes that's a big challenge. But we do a lot of creative stuff. We've used Facebook, we've used old obituaries and Google searches. We have some law enforcement databases, some regular civilian databases, a lot of interesting ways to track down families and get them notified. We may testify in civil and criminal courts. Most of the time, it's going to be Dr. White, who did the autopsy, to testify in court as to the findings of the autopsy, but we're starting to see more subpoenas come in for our investigators to take the stand and kind of talk about the death investigation themselves, what they're going through on scene. Because my investigators, they're that long title, medico-legal death investigators. They investigate the medicine side of it, the health side, the legal side, and we're there with law enforcement. We're there with the sheriff's office, the police departments, their CSIs. They're kind of going through looking for the crime side, make sure that if there was a crime committed or not committed, like that's their focus. Our focus is different. So, we want to spend a lot of time on these investigations. We also want to be able to write really well about them. And then if we have to testify to what we saw and experienced on scene, then we get that opportunity to testify. So that's kind of a new learning curve for us too. I held a meeting with the DA's office to kind of let them know of like, hey, this is what our office is doing. This is what we have to offer beyond just Dr. White and the autopsy report. We have a whole team of investigators that are involved in cases too, and we pick up stuff, we find stuff that's different than what the CSIs and law enforcement are finding. So we can be a good benefit in those criminal trials.
Are we good on time still, JD, or do you want to just go to questions? I know it's 1 o'clock.
Oh yeah.
Are we still good? Are we still good on time? I know it's 1 o'clock, so I want to be mindful. 5 minutes, probably.
Okay.
5 minutes. I think we can just skip the questions.
Perfect. Yeah, if you guys have questions, we can move into questions and elaborate a little bit more as we go.
So I'm probably the only one that's ever wondered this, but why on earth is a coroner elected? That seems silly. When every time it comes up for an election, I don't know if someone's qualified to be a coroner. It's not like they're why is it elected? Why isn't it just appointed by someone in the county, like they apply for the job and someone hires them?
Exactly. That's a great question, and it pops up every time. Like, why is the coroner elected? Like, you want somebody that's skilled and educated in the job, but Colorado is still the Wild West a little bit. So our sheriff's elected, and even to run for sheriff, like, you don't have to go through the police academy. You can do that after you're elected, and like that kind of blew my mind too. And the coroner's office is the same way. We were fortunate enough to change the law a little bit and require a little bit of experience to run for coroner, but I think it's a hard battle to change it, to progress from a coroner system to a medical examiner system. I think Dr. Allen did a really good job of kind of professionalizing what we have in Northern Colorado as kind of a regional medical examiner system, kind of a hybrid thing in our state. But it's hard to change the rules at the state level. There's pushback from both sides, I think, and I think it's interesting. Like, I'm fairly, I was independent for forever. I ran as a Democrat because I thought I had the best chance in Larimer County as well. It aligns with my values a little bit of where I want to be, but it doesn't play into my role as coroner. My role as coroner is cause and manner of death. It's time of death. It's notifying families and things like that, and taking care of people, and that's what's important to me. So it's unique that it's still an elected position. I think it comes up a lot of, like, why is it still elected? Well, that they have, I think the legislators and everything else, like, they just kind of ignore us. They have other things going on. Like, the last thing they really want to focus their time on is changing the coroner system to a medical examiner system. So it is kind of a Wild West thing, and I am oftentimes we're unopposed. I'm unopposed this year. Like, it is just, there's one name on there for coroner. Like, why do we even have to be on there? And it's unique, but yeah, you're voting for us. So I'm glad to be here and tell you about what I do and my thoughts. But oh yeah.
Quickly to add, sorry, on that too, because the sheriff is elected, along with the coroner. Fun fact: the coroner is the only elected official that has the power to arrest the sheriff if he ever got in trouble. So. And the reasoning behind that is because they're both elected by the people. The people trusted them. That's why they elected them. And they both are sworn under oath. So just a fun fact on that, and why, it is an elected position.
Right, and hopefully it doesn't come to that, because I've worked with John a long time, back when he was investigator at the sheriff's office, before he was even over at Fort Collins PD and back to sheriff. So he's a good one. I appreciate him.
2 questions. I don't know how many deaths there are a year in Larimer County. So out of that, what percentage of those deaths have to be investigated? And then, kind of related to what you were saying, because you talked about doing legislative work, what are the 2 policy areas that, in your opinion, could use some attention or refresh?
Yeah, thank you. So as far as the number of deaths in Larimer County, I think our county is 370,000 people or so, and we get a little over 3,000 deaths a year, and like I said, those are kind of split between the non-coroner cases and the coroner cases. So out of the usually I think it's about 1,700 of them actually make it as a coroner's case. Out of those, we're 250 to 280 of those actually get autopsied. So, math-wise, those are kind of our numbers there. And then, what was the second question? Oh, legislative stuff. So, yeah. So.
What could use more? You said, like, more focus on.
What 2 policy areas, in your opinion, could use refresh or some attention?
Absolutely. So the statutes that you saw, they've been around a long time, and kind of why we're not haven't changed the coroner system is they don't get a lot of attention. So I like where it starts. It's based on the National Association of Medical Examiners. They have a group. They have a guide for manner of death guidelines. They're our accrediting office for our office. And then there's the IACME, the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners. So those are the two big organizations that kind of guide what coroners' offices do and kind of what our statutes are built on. What I'm having trouble with and what I'm seeing as coroner is that, and I see that through law school as well, is that there's a lot of contradictions in the law. And so one thing I see a lot of is in Colorado, autopsy reports are public record. Nothing else we produce is public record. It's all protected under the Colorado Criminal Justice Rights Act. And I have discretion on if I want to release investigative reports, if I want to release photographs, if I want to release other information. And I like that discretion. I like having those conversations with families. I've sat in Rafael's office with a mom who lost her son in a motorcycle crash and really wanted to see photos. And we talked about the photos. We talked on the phone a lot. And I got to the point where she finally came in and we held hands and we went through photos together. And it gave me that control to sit with her, understand where she was with her emotions, because I could tell by the way she squeezed my hand that she needed more time with this photo. She was ready to skip over another photo and move to the next one. I could get that sense from her. So, I want to work with the laws that kind of help bolster the discretion that I have those protections, because that always comes up, especially I think media tries to put legislation through that kind of takes away that discretion and will force my hand. And I've written letters and I've spoken to a lot of people about it. I don't want to have to blindly be forced to just send a ton of photos to a grieving mother or to a stranger out of state. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's okay. Like I want to make sure the photos we go through are for the right reason, to the right person, and have some of that protection. And same thing with autopsy reports. I understand as a resident, as a citizen, I want access to our government institutions. I want to know what happens behind the curtain. But my office is a lot different than the treasurer's office, than the assessor's office. Like, they have a lot of personal information too. We have a lot of protected health information, reproductive health care information, behavioral health care information that gets put into autopsy reports. And I have to release the entire autopsy report. I can't redact it, I can't change it. It goes to whoever asks for it. And I don't feel comfortable with it. I used to redact reports, and I lost a hearing on that one, and so now I have to do unredacted autopsy reports. So that's one thing I'm kind of working on, because I want Rafael to be able to issue unredacted autopsy reports to the family that need to know that medical information. I don't want him to release that same report to some group out of state that has some political agenda, that is just a crime junkie or a conspiracy theorist or something like that doesn't, I don't know what they're using the report for, but I want to protect the decedents that come through. I want to protect the families in our community and your family members if they get autopsied. I want you to know that I'm doing all I can to protect their private health information, their behavioral health information from going out there. So those are the big things, is like really how my office can operate under the Colorado Open Records Act, have discretion to release what needs to be released for public health, for public safety, and to be able to redact and not release certain things to protect the privacy of families and individuals as well. So it's a tough balance, but it needs to be codified in statute a little bit more, because there's a lot of contradictions that are difficult in old case law that are based on old autopsy reports that are a lot different than our medical record version autopsy reports now.
So 2 questions real quick. Where is your office located?
Yeah,
Here.
so I'll answer that one real quick. First, our office and our morgue is all combined into one building now. We're over by the jail off of Prospect, just east of Timberline.
Got it.
And then we used to be in McKee Medical Center in Loveland is where our morgue used to be.
Got it. Second question. So do you collaborate with the other counties, let's say your world, the coroner's world, when a case comes in, let's say it happened in another county, the nasty stuff, body found here, but it happened somewhere else.
Absolutely. So Colorado, we're very tight knit with all our coroners, especially the ones we're doing autopsies for. But kind of the general rule is where the injury occurred is the coroner that's going to take jurisdiction over that case. So because we have MCR here, we're getting cases that come into MCR to the ER from car crashes and suicides and things that happen over in Greeley and Weld County. We have children here in Larimer County that get injured. They go down to Children's Hospital and die there. So those cases they get transferred back to me if the injury happened in Larimer County. If they die at MCR, but it began in Weld County, we're going to transfer jurisdiction out to them. So we have those working relationships and those partnerships and memorandums to share across county lines. We also do that with Wyoming too. Like, I can't force Colorado law on Wyoming, but we have that mutual understanding and agreement that we operate very similar. We look at the same thing, but really that home county is the best place to investigate the car crash and the law enforcement. They've already started that process. So that's kind of how that works. We have a Colorado Coroners Association. They have a conference every year, so that's a great way to meet new coroners, get together and collaborate as well.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation today. It's one of those things we don't think about, and we hope we don't have to interact with you too much, but we're really glad you're there. So thank you for all you guys do.
Thank you.